Hello everyone, my name's Radio Mike, this is The Inside of My Mind. Thank you for joining me today where I want to talk a little bit about a brand new movie that is out on Netflix. Well, it's brand new on my Netflix account in Australia, but I believe this movie did come out in 2019. And it is a Spanish film that is called The Platform. It has been translated into English, and at first I didn't even realize that this movie was originally in Spanish. I didn't even realize that it was dubbed over, but I was thinking, wow, like the writing in this feels a little bit off, and then I realized that it was actually English voice actors dubbed over the original Spanish. This movie's got a lot going on in it, and I really just wanted to do a little debrief on it here. But before I get into that, thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. It really is meaning a lot to see the views going up and the subscribers going up. Thank you so much. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Most people that watch these are not subscribed, and that sucks. And I do a lot of videos on movies, games, music, TV, pop culture. That's sort of my jam. So I would love you to go and check out some of my other videos. But now, without further ado, let's look into The Platform. So this is like a horror thriller kind of film that is deeply critical of like broader societal structures in the present time. And I feel like it's very relevant right now, particularly in my country where, well, or all around the world really, where everyone's in lockdown and the economy is just failing, and we're starting to ask some really big questions about the future of the human race, I guess, the human species, and what we do next and how we avoid getting into a situation like this if another pandemic hits. Now, this movie doesn't have anything to do with pandemics, but I guess I just want to point out that it felt very relevant to where we are in the current climate. Essentially what the movie is about, it's quite vague, but there is it's some kind of jail or facility where people are locked up in cells of two people per cell, and it is a vertical tower of an unknown amount of floors, an unknown amount of levels, in which every day, starting from level 1, a massive table of food, a massive platform of food comes down, and everyone gets to eat the food for like, say, a minute, and then the platform lowers to the next level, and like level 2 has access to anything that level 1 didn't eat, and then so on and so forth. So basically, by the time you are at, say, level 48, where the main character in this film starts off, you are pretty much left with scraps and leftovers from the 47 floors above you. And say you're on level 100, you are almost left with no food, which leaves a lot of those people on the lower floors turning to some pretty drastic measures, which we'll get into a bit later. Each month, every cell sort of shuffles, so everyone gets sent to a different cell each month. So you could go from number 48 to number 150, where you're put in a really bad position, or you could go from floor 200 to floor 6, for example, and then you're in a much better position. So most of the people that are in the cells have an experience of being very low and not having any food, and an experience of being very high with a lot of food and a lot of the benefits of that. So we're already playing with a very interesting concept that is, I guess, being critical of class structure, capitalism, and the broader societal structures that we live under, where rich people are very rich and poor people are very, very poor and of more threat to potential dangers in their lives. As we learn more about this facility, we realize that by the time the platform gets to the lower floors, there is literally no food left. So a lot of the people on these lower floors are resorting to pretty much cannibalism to survive. They just don't have a choice but to kill their cellmates and feed on their flesh to survive. This movie does get very gory at points, very gruesome, and also very psychologically triggering as well. There is a lot of really graphic stuff you see in here, and a lot of internal battles within the main character's mind that we see a lot of. He's really struggling, having a lot of like hallucinations and really wild thoughts going on as he tries to survive without becoming a cannibal when he's on the lower floors. One thing I noted about this movie is that while I appreciate the social commentary it's trying to make, I don't think it could have been any more transparent about what it's trying to say. Like, I think the metaphor of the platform is, almost so literally a metaphor of of capitalism and what this filmmaker is trying to say about our society. You know, literally using food as an example of how poor people can't really get much food and rich people can pretty much have as much food as they want. Like, it's a very transparent metaphor. There's no subtlety here. There's no mystery as to what that message is. It is just a commentary about social structures. What I thought was really interesting about this movie is the characters that are at the top, the people on the top levels who have access to a lot of food, they have all spent time on lower levels where they've had to take drastic measures to survive. So one of the things you notice about these people in the cells is they're not willing to compromise or try and ration the food or try and find a way of equally distributing everything so everyone gets their fair share, which is, I suppose, a little bit of socialist, communist kind of commentary there. They're not willing to do that because they've experienced the lows of the low. So when they get to the top, they're not willing to share. They're not willing to negotiate. They're just going to indulge in the spoils of their luck, I suppose. And I found that a very interesting commentary because it sort of suggests that often, even if people who start out with not much, even though they understand that struggle, they don't necessarily want to help the people below them when they finally make it in life and end up rich or successful, because they are just too indulged with what they haven't had in the past, that now that they have it, they don't want other people to have it. And I think that was a really important note that the filmmaker put in. It is a really gruesome and just gross example of the greed and the desperation of human beings and how people at the top of our society, the rich and powerful people, really do control all the means, all the resources, and they really do have power to change the way things happen. They do have power to potentially, say, ration the food so everyone gets some, or at least make it fair for everyone involved, as opposed to hoarding resources for their own personal benefit. And I think that is a problem in our society that is really aptly demonstrated through this metaphor of the platform. I don't know if the very graphic scenes where characters eat human flesh and you see that are necessary to get this metaphor across, but I guess it really does show the desperation of all these characters. I just found it so gross and couldn't really look at the screen when they were doing it. It was really intense to see characters eating raw human meat. Very, 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 very intense. Toward the end of the film, the main character is now on level 6. He's moved up and he is in a cell with another person who is trying to, with a rope, climb up each floor. And by talking to the people above him, they agree to help him, only to deceive him and literally shit on his face while he's doing it. I thought that was, again, like a very, very, very strong but transparent metaphor of what the rich do to the poor in the guise of this filmmaker, that the rich are literally shitting on the poor through their actions. So instead, the two guys in the cell, the main character and his now sidekick, decide to ride the platform all the way down to the bottom. They estimate there are 250 floors, I believe, but there ends up being 333 floors, most of which are empty because the people in those cells have since died. I guess it's important to mention that a bunch of the other cellmates that the main character has shared with in this time have died, and he starts having hallucinations of them trying to convince him to do horrible things. When they finally make it to the bottom floor, it's like a pretty empty void of nothingness. They find a young child, the mother of which the main character has been interacting with throughout the movie, who's always trying to ride the platform down to find her child. Now, this young child follows the main character down into the void, where the main character finds his former cellmates there waiting for him. The young child rides the platform back up to the top while the main character walks away with the original cellmate. I guess what I felt like this was saying is that the only way for us to change these societal structures that are so inherent to our lifestyles is with future generations. There's this big thing made about the child being the message. The girl is the message, and by sending her back to the top, they're sort of saying that future generations have the power to change this while the older generations have to die out and accept their fate. I saw him walking away with the original jail cell figure as him dying and going off to some sort of afterlife or whatever you want to think. The movie really reminded me of this science fiction horror film called Cube from the 90s, where a lot of the characters find themselves in these cube-like jail cells, and each cube is interconnected and full of different traps. Some are sound-based, some are fire or laser based, and they have to try and find their way out of this prison. It reminded me a lot of that movie. It's like a dystopian look at our future if we continue the way we're going, I suppose, is the message the filmmaker wants to get across. You also get scenes of the top of the building where the facility is run by a chef with a bunch of cooks who are preparing meals, and you see a lot of things where there's a hair in one of the foods and the chef goes crazy at one of the cooks whose hair it was, and very extreme measures being taken in this very, very strict workplace, I suppose. I'm not sure where all that fit in, but it was interesting to see nonetheless. Overall, I enjoyed this movie. I didn't think it was anything groundbreaking. Plus, I didn't particularly think the writing for the English dub was that good, but I think that's hard to pull off as it is. But I thought this was quite a good dystopian thriller with a lot of gore that maybe wasn't that necessary, with a decent message. I don't know if the filmmaker proposed an alternative. I really don't know what he wants us to do, but I guess that message of the child being the future and the children being able to change our lifestyles was his solution to the problem that he poses in the film through all these metaphors. But yeah, this movie was fine. I would probably not watch it again, but I'd encourage you to check it out at least. So let me know what you thought of the platform. I'd love to know your thoughts. Did you like it? Did you hate it? That's pretty much all I have to say about the movie today. I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. Like I said, I do all kinds of videos like this, and I also do a podcast called 20th Century Boy. I talk about my life working as a radio and podcast producer here in Melbourne, Australia, and a bunch of other things in my day-to-day and week-to-week, and the blunders of my life as an adult millennial trying to navigate my mental health and dating and work and all these things as well. I also have a band, Release the Sounds, comedy punk rock music. I think you'd really like it, so please check it out on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you get your music pretty much. Thank you so much for watching. My name has been Radio Mike, and this is The Inside of My Mind. I will catch you later. Bye.
I hold you close the moment last I touch your skin, but I went to run my hand through your hair and I noticed you were attached to string. You were a puppet this whole time, you were attached to string. You were a puppet this whole time.